On my daughter's wedding day, her arrogant groom introduced me to his boss as an unemployed nobody. He froze when the man smiled, patted my shoulder and said, "Good to see you. Partner." Then he turned to the groom with a cold, "You're fired." Derek's face drained of color. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share in the comments what time it is where you... The waiter guided us to a corner table at Lakeview Grill. I watched Derek Harrington adjust his tie before sitting. Nancy beamed, her engagement ring glinting in the soft restaurant light. "So, Mr. Wood," Derek began, not even waiting for drinks. "Nancy mentioned you're between opportunities right now." I blinked. Between opportunities. The phrase hung in the air like heavy perfume, unnecessary and suffocating. "I'm retired," I said calmly, unfolding my napkin. Derek's smile widened, but his eyes remained cold. "Right, of course. Well, I work at Technova Innovations, one of the Midwest's leading AI firms. I'm a senior manager in corporate sales." Sounds impressive. I kept my tone neutral. "How long have you been there?" 3 years. "I've boosted department sales by 40%. Derek leaned back, expecting admiration. "What field were you in, Mr. Wood?" "Nothing remarkable, just business." Nancy touched Derek's arm gently. "Dad's being modest. He always says that." Derek nodded knowingly. "I see. Well, the main thing is health at your age, right? Keeping busy with hobbies." My grip tightened slightly around my glass. "At my age." The condescension dripped from his voice like honey from a cracked jar. "Hobbies keep me occupied," I agreed. The waiter appeared with his pad. Derek ordered pan-seared salmon with truffle risotto. Nancy chose the herb-crusted chicken, and I asked for the soup and sandwich combo. Derek's eyebrows lifted slightly. "Dad, are you sure?" "This is supposed to be celebratory." Nancy's cheeks flushed pink. "Derek, it's fine. Dad likes simple food." Of course. Derek waved dismissively. "Everyone has different budgets." "I get it, budgets." The word hit like a slap. This 34-year-old manager assumed he understood my finances based on a soup order. "So, tell me about Technova," I redirected. "What sort of AI solutions?" Derek puffed up with pride. "Cutting-edge systems, machine learning for efficiency, predictive analytics, automated decision trees. We're transforming business operations." "Interesting. The company's about 30 years old, but only really surged in the last decade. Before that, it was just another garage project. Now we're making serious revenue." He sliced into his salmon with surgical precision. "I'm actually on track for a promotion. Department director, maybe even regional manager after that." Nancy smiled proudly. "Derek's incredibly driven. He sometimes works 60 hours a week." 60? I raised an eyebrow. "That's dedication." "Success takes sacrifice, Mr. Wood. That's something my generation understands." His tone implied mine did not. "Business moves quickly now. You adapt or you're left behind." I tasted my soup, a surprisingly good tomato bisque. "Change can be difficult." "Exactly. That's why I stay up to date, attend seminars, build networks. You can't just drift anymore." He gestured with his fork. "People your age, no offense, often get stuck in old ways." "The world's different now." Nancy shifted uneasily. "Derek means things have changed since Dad's time." "Right. Evolution," I nodded. "Survival of the fittest and all that." Derek missed the edge in my voice. "Exactly. Companies like Technova reward innovation. Old school thinking doesn't work anymore. We want fresh ideas, bold strategies, and you provide those. Absolutely. My results speak for themselves. 40% growth doesn't happen by accident." He leaned forward. "Between us, some of the older staff aren't keeping up. Dead weight, honestly, dead weight." I filed the phrase away carefully. "Yet experienced employees must add value," I suggested mildly. "Not if they can't adapt. Then it's just stagnation. The company would be better off replacing half of them with younger talent." Nancy gave a nervous laugh. "Derek's very passionate about efficiency." "Passion drives results," he said firmly. "That's what separates winners from..." His eyes flicked to my soup. "From people who settle for less." The insult lingered in the air. People who settle for less, like me? The retired man ordering soup while his daughter's ambitious fiancé savored risotto? I set my spoon down deliberately. The clink echoed sharply. "Settling can be a choice," I said evenly. Derek didn't hear the warning. He was too busy basking in what he thought was victory over the helpless old man at the table. Wiping his mouth with his napkin, he leaned in. "Mr. Wood, I respect that you're trying to stay positive. But have you considered consulting? With your experience, you might find opportunities." "Experience is valuable," I replied carefully. "Sometimes it teaches you to stay quiet and observe. But you can't just observe forever. You have to move forward." "Take action," Derek insisted. "Look at me. I plan to be director within a year, regional manager within 3. You need goals and timelines," Nancy smiled proudly. Derek's very goal-oriented. "Goals matter," I agreed, though sometimes the most meaningful ones aren't obvious to others. Derek missed the point. "Exactly. That's why you need to network, meet people, make yourself available. I could introduce you to some contacts, maybe entry-level positions. Nothing too demanding. Entry-level positions for me." The irony was thick enough to slice. "Very generous," I said. "It's about giving back, supporting those less fortunate." Derek's tone carried self-importance. "Successful people have a duty to lift others." Nancy smiled at him. "See, Dad? Derek really cares about people." "I can see that," I replied, sipping water. "Your compassion is clear." Derek absorbed this as praise. "It's not about money for me, Mr. Wood. Don't get me wrong, the 6-figure salary is nice, but it's about impact. Building something meaningful. 6 figures. He announced it like a breakthrough discovery. "Building something meaningful," I repeated, like Technova was built. Well, yes, but that was different. The founders back then were just fortunate. Right place, right time. Innovation is happening now, with people like me pushing boundaries. Fortunate. 3 decades of 18-hour days, missed family dinners, and constant financial strain reduced to chance. "The founders were lucky," I said slowly. "They had to be. What did they know about AI then? The field barely existed. They probably stumbled into success." Derek laughed, the sound grating. "Now we're the ones doing real work, turning their accidental success into something professional." Nancy noticed the tension but misunderstood. "Dad, Derek just wants to help. He knows starting over isn't easy. Starting over? As if my entire career had been erased, leaving me at square one." "Starting over can be freeing," I said evenly. "It clarifies what matters most." "Absolutely," Derek jumped in. "That's the right attitude. Fresh start, new opportunities. You just have to be realistic about limitations." "Limitations?" The word hung like a challenge. "Which limitations?" I asked quietly. Derek gestured vaguely. "Well, age matters. Technology moves fast. Older workers struggle to keep pace. Plus, most companies want employees who can grow with them long-term." "Long-term growth?" I asked dryly. "Like 30 years? Exactly, you get it." Derek seemed pleased with his lesson. "Though, starting at your stage, you might have 5 to 10 years max before retirement. Companies invest in futures," he paused. "Not what?" "Not short-term arrangements," he finished awkwardly. Nancy reached for my hand. "Dad, maybe we should change the subject." But Derek pressed on, his voice more animated. "The business world rewards drive and ambition. Just showing up isn't enough. You need vision, innovation, the ability to disrupt old systems." "Disrupt old systems," I echoed. "Exactly, like what I'm doing at Technova. The older leadership is stuck in outdated methods. They think longevity equals expertise, but markets evolve. Need shift. Sometimes you must dismantle old structures to build better ones. Dismantle systems created by so-called lucky founders who stumbled into success." I placed my napkin down carefully. The small gesture silenced Derek. "Excuse me, I need some air." "Dad," Nancy's voice carried concern. "Are you okay?" "Just tired," I replied, pulling out my wallet. I left $40 on the table, enough for my meal and tip. "This covers my part." Derek looked surprised. "Mr. Wood, that's unnecessary." "I insist," I said, adjusting my jacket. "Thank you for dinner and the career advice." Nancy half rose. "Dad, please don't leave." Derek didn't mean... He meant exactly what he said. I looked at my daughter's fiancé, and I heard it all. The drive from downtown Chicago to my house in Evanston gave me 45 minutes to reflect. Derek's words echoed. Lucky founders, dead weight, starting over at your age. By the time I reached my driveway, anger had hardened into something sharper, cold, deliberate resolve. I entered my study, my sanctuary, designed to tell the real story Derek Harrington knew nothing about. The walls displayed photos and awards hidden from casual visitors. Technova's 1995 incorporation papers signed by Walter Clean and me. Pictures from our first product launch. 3 decades of industry awards. A 2018 Forbes article naming me the quiet revolutionary of AI. I sat in my leather chair, staring at the photo on my desk. Walter and me in that cramped garage. Young and determined, certain we could change the world. And we had. I picked up the phone and dialed Walter. He answered on the second ring. "Porter, how was dinner with the future son-in-law?" "Enlightening," I replied. "How's the company?" "Same as always when you're not here, chaos." Walter chuckled. "But really, things are running smoothly." "Reports look great." "When are you ending this retirement break?" "Still enjoying it, old friend." "Then enjoy it while you can." "Derek Harrington in sales is asking for more responsibility." "Ambitious kid. I'll give him that." My hand tightened on the phone. "Derek Harrington, you know him? The senior sales manager has been with us for 3 years. He does come up with some solid ideas, but there's that ambitious gleam in his eyes that makes me uneasy. He keeps pushing for modernizing our methods and challenging what he calls outdated paradigms. The same phrase he repeated earlier. What kind of disruption?" I asked. His answer was predictable. Streamline the company, reduce legacy practices, restructure departments, and bring in new talent. Yesterday, he hinted we might be holding on to too much senior dead weight. That phrase again. "Interesting perspective," I said evenly. "Between you and me, Porter, I believe he imagines himself leading this company one day. I can't decide if that's admirable drive or reckless arrogance." Looking at the photo from our garage startup years, I thought, probably both. Still, his sales record is strong, and the board favors him, so I can't complain too much. Walter paused. "You sure you don't want to return?" "I miss working with someone who remembers why we built this company." "I remember perfectly," I replied quietly. "That's why I'm staying away a little longer." After hanging up, I opened my laptop to review Technova's latest financials. 3 decades of steady growth, innovation, and careful leadership. Annual revenue nearing $200 million, more than 800 employees across 4 states. Yet Derek Harrington dismissed all of it as mere luck. I leaned back, smiling for the first time that evening. Derek wanted disruption. He wanted to cut out so-called dead weight. Perfect. I'd give him exactly what he claimed to want. The wedding was set for June 15th. 4 months for Derek to stay convinced he'd judged me correctly. 4 months for him to reveal his true nature to Nancy, to our family, to everyone who mattered. 4 months to prepare the most enlightening lesson of his career. I reached for a notepad, recording his remarks about the founders, his dismissal of senior staff, his patronizing advice to entry-level workers. Every slight, every assumption, every careless remark would be remembered and answered. He wanted to dismantle old systems and build anew. Excellent. I'd let him try. I picked up the old garage photo again, studying Walter's younger face beside mine. We had built Technova from nothing, sacrificing everything for a vision no one else believed in. We had earned every win, survived every setback, and proved every expert wrong. Derek thought experience without change was stagnation. Soon he would discover what 30 years of adaptation looked like when aimed at a very specific target. Closing the laptop, I went upstairs, already outlining tomorrow's work. I had a role to maintain, an illusion to uphold, and a lesson to deliver. Derek wanted to see how successful people guide those less experienced. He was about to find out. 2 weeks later, after that memorable dinner, I had kept up appearances exactly as Derek expected, reading newspapers on the porch, tending my garden, living the role of a retired man with little purpose. So when I heard a car in my driveway that Tuesday afternoon, I was ready. Through the window, I saw Derek step from his BMW, adjusting his suit jacket. Nancy hurried up the steps with excitement, holding what could only be wedding invitations. "Dad," she burst in, "we have something wonderful to show you." Derek followed, slower, his eyes scanning my modest home with that polite disapproval I'd seen before. The furniture was comfortable but simple, the decorations tasteful but ordinary, perfect for the persona I had crafted. "Mr. Wood," Derek greeted me with a quick handshake. "Hope we're not disturbing your afternoon activities." Afternoon activities, as though my days were wasted in front of a television. "Not at all," I said warmly. "What brings you here?" Nancy handed me a cream-colored envelope with expensive detailing, the official wedding invitation. "You're the first to see it." I opened it carefully, admiring the calligraphy and heavy cardstock. "Beautiful, sweetheart. June 15th, Lakeshore Country Club. Very elegant. Derek chose the venue," Nancy said proudly. "It's where all the major Technova events are held." Derek straightened. "Location is critical for occasions like this. My boss and several board members will attend. I wanted somewhere that reflects—" He gestured toward my living room. "Professional standards." "Impressive," I said, placing the invitation on the table. "I'll need to think about what to wear." This was Derek's chance, and he took it eagerly. "Actually, Mr. Wood, that's something I wanted to bring up." His tone shifted into what he likely thought was polite concern. "My boss, Walter Klein, will be there. He's very influential in our industry. Perhaps you should consider dressing, how should I put this, more presentably than usual." Nancy gave him a warning glance, but Derek was determined to improve his future father-in-law's appearance. "I already have a perfectly fine suit," I said calmly. "I'm sure you do," Derek replied, his eyes drifting over my casual slacks and cardigan. "Walter expects a certain level of refinement from the families of his employees. First impressions are crucial in business. If only Derek knew that Walter and I once survived on pizza while working 20-hour days, when sophistication simply meant remembering to wear matching socks. Don't worry, son," I said with what I hoped was reassuring simplicity. "I know how to handle bosses." Derek's doubtful look suggested otherwise. "Walter Klein is one of the most influential people in our industry. Mr. Wood, he built Technova from nothing into a major corporation. Men like him notice everything, how you dress, how you speak, how you carry yourself. Built from nothing." Walter would probably smile at that phrase, considering we had started with nothing but determination and credit card debt. "It will be interesting to meet him," I said neutrally. Derek leaned forward, taking my tone as insufficiently serious. "Mr. Wood, I'm not trying to be difficult, but this wedding shapes my professional future as well. Walter's opinion of my family could impact my career. I need everyone to make the right impression." The right impression. Translation. I had to look successful enough to help Derek, but not so successful as to outshine him. "What impression are you hoping for?" I asked. "Respectable, conservative, someone who values hard work and tradition," Derek said, speaking as if explaining a simple concept to a child. "Walter admires people who've earned their place through dedication and merit. Like spending 30 years building a company from scratch," I thought. Perhaps sensing the tension, Nancy stepped in. "Dad, maybe we should look at your suit together." "I could help you choose a nice tie." "That's very thoughtful, dear," I said, touched by her effort to bridge the gap. "I'm sure I can find something appropriate." Derek wasn't finished. "The key is projecting dignity, Mr. Wood. Walter values traditional family principles and personal responsibility. He believes people should present themselves with pride, regardless of circumstances." Regardless of circumstances. The words landed like a polished insult wrapped in courtesy. "I understand completely," I replied. "Personal presentation reflects character." "Exactly," Derek said, clearly pleased I had absorbed the lesson. "Character matters more than money to men like Walter. He can recognize genuine quality instantly. Walter certainly could. We had recognized it in each other for 3 decades. Nancy then suggested we step into the garden, saying she wanted to show Derek my tomato plants. She led me through the sliding glass doors into the backyard, leaving Derek inside, occupied with seating charts spread on the dining table. The afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the rows of vegetables I had tended since retirement. "Dad," Nancy's voice carried the same weight it had when she was 16, explaining why she had borrowed my car without asking. "What are you planning?" I settled onto the wooden bench I'd built last summer, gesturing for her to sit beside me. "Planning? Just trying to be a good host to my future son-in-law." "Don't." She sat down but turned toward me firmly. "I've known you my whole life. You're up to something, and it involves Derek. I need to know what it is." Through the glass, Derek was still hunched over the seating charts, likely calculating proximity to Walter's table. The irony was almost perfect. "Sweetheart, sometimes people need time to reveal their true selves." "What does that mean?" Nancy's voice sharpened. Why won't you tell Derek the truth about Technova? Why let him believe you're just some unemployed old man in need of advice? There it was. My daughter was far more observant than Derek ever realized. You know about Technova? I asked carefully. I've always known, Dad. Maybe not every detail, but I knew you didn't just work there. You helped build it. The photos in your study, the awards you thought I wouldn't notice, the way Walter talks about you on the phone. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. Why are you hiding the truth from the man I'm about to marry? I reached over and took her hand. The sunlight caught her engagement ring, scattering small rainbows across the garden soil. I'm not lying, Nancy. I'm just not offering details. That's not the same thing, is it? I pressed her fingers lightly. Has Derek ever asked about my background? Truly asked about who I am? Nancy started to reply but stopped. We both knew Derek had judged me based only on appearance and lifestyle, never bothering to learn more. But that's not fair, Nancy's voice cracked. He doesn't even know he's being tested. Life isn't fair, sweetheart, I said gently. People judge each other every day based on first impressions. The real question is, who does Derek become when he thinks he holds the advantage? Through the glass, Derek paced on his phone, probably giving an update about his boss attending the wedding. His movements were animated, self-important. You saw how he treated me at dinner, I continued softly. The condescension, the unsolicited advice, the dismissive way he talks to those he considers unsuccessful. Is that the man you want to build a life with? Nancy fell silent, watching Derek through the window. He's not always like that. When we're alone, he's different, more caring. I'm sure he is. But true character isn't what we show when it's easy. It's how we act when no one important is watching. So, you're planning some sort of lesson for him? Nancy's voice mixed worry with reluctant interest. What happens when he finds out at the wedding? I smiled, feeling the satisfaction of a plan carefully set. He'll learn that assumptions can be costly, that respect isn't tied to wealth or titles, and that kindness should never depend on social status. If he learns the lesson, good. If he reacts with anger or shame, then you'll know the truth about who he really is. I turned to my daughter. Nancy, I'm not trying to ruin your happiness. I'm trying to protect it. It's better to see his real nature now than 5 years into marriage. Nancy turned her ring around her finger, lost in thought. You want me to keep this a secret until the wedding? I want you to watch him. Watch how Derek treats people he thinks are beneath him. Listen to how he talks about Walter, about success, about who deserves respect, and then decide what kind of life you want. And if I decide Derek is exactly the man I thought he was, then I'll celebrate at your wedding and welcome him to the family with genuine joy. But make sure you're seeing him clearly, not just what you hope is there. Nancy stood, brushing dirt from her jeans. Derek ended his call and looked around with impatience. He's going to hate you when he finds out, she whispered. Probably. The real question is, will he hate himself for how he treated me? She looked at me, torn between loyalty and doubt. Finally, she nodded slowly. Okay, Dad. I'll keep your secret. But promise me this isn't just about revenge. I promise, sweetheart. Everything I'm doing is out of love for you. Derek stepped out to the sliding door, tapping his watch. Nancy, we need to leave soon. I've got a West Coast call in an hour. Coming, Nancy called back, giving me one last look. Just be gentle with him, whatever you're planning. I kissed her forehead. Gentle lessons rarely last. The months from March to June passed in a careful routine. While Derek kept up his patronizing check-ins and Nancy held to our agreement of silence, I quietly arranged every detail of what would become the most valuable wedding gift of Derek's life. 3 days before the wedding, I stood at Armando's tailoring shop on Michigan Avenue, facing the three-way mirror. The charcoal gray suit fit perfectly, elegant yet reserved. Impeccable cut, Mr. Wood, Armando said, adjusting the shoulders. This suit carries dignity without showing off its cost. That's the goal, I replied, admiring how the faint pinstripes caught the light. It communicates the right message without words. Exactly, Armando nodded. True quality whispers, not shouts. 2 days before the wedding, I visited Cartwright & Associates in the Gold Coast. The saleswoman, sharp and confident, laid several pieces across black velvet. These Technova logo cufflinks are striking, she said, holding up platinum ones with the company's diamond insignia. "Custom order, I assume?" "A small commemorative piece," I answered, fastening them. The light reflected subtly, understated yet distinctive, enough for Walter to recognize instantly. Excellent choice. They believed success should be shown without extravagance. The day before the wedding, I met Jonathan Pierce, my private banker at First National. His corner office overlooked Lake Michigan, with floor-to-ceiling windows framing the endless horizon. He glanced at the transfer documents, raising his eyebrows. "Are you sure about this amount, Porter?" "This is a special occasion," I answered, signing with deliberate strokes. "My daughter deserves the best wedding gift possible." $50,000 is quite generous even for you," Jonathan said before processing the paperwork smoothly. "Cash or certified check?" "Certified check," I replied. "I want the amount clearly visible when it's presented." That evening, I walked my usual path along the Lake Michigan shoreline, the late sunlight shimmering across the water. Tomorrow's rehearsal dinner would mark the closing step in Derek's preparation. I thought of Walter's likely reaction when he saw the Technova cufflinks, his own idea for company gifts 3 years ago. He would recognize them instantly. That moment alone would be worth 30 years of waiting. Derek had carefully prepared his boss to meet the father of a struggling employee. Walter would expect polite conversation with a man down on his luck, maybe even offer kind words about the value of hard work. Instead, he would find his co-founder seated at the family table, wearing the company logo and presenting checks larger than Derek's annual salary. I stopped to watch the calm lake, its surface like glass. Storms were predicted tomorrow, but storms sometimes clear the air. My phone buzzed with a message from Nancy. "Rehearsal dinner tomorrow at 6 p.m. Derek's excited for you to meet Walter." "Still time to change your mind, Dad," I typed back. "Looking forward to it, sweetheart. Everything will work out as it should." It was true. Derek would get what he had been asking for, a chance to reveal his true nature before those who mattered. His values, priorities, and his definition of worth would be on display. The only difference would be in how the audience responded. Satisfied, I walked back to my car, feeling like a plan was reaching perfect execution. Tomorrow, Derek would learn that assumptions carry costs. By Sunday, he would understand that respect should never depend on status. Behind me, the gentle waves rolled in, steady as time itself. The next evening, the Drake Hotel's marble lobby gleamed under crystal chandeliers as I entered through the revolving doors, my reflection repeating across polished surfaces. I had driven from Evanston just 20 minutes earlier, satisfied like a chess player about to make checkmate. Tomorrow would bring revelations, but tonight was one last chance to watch Derek closely. The rehearsal was held in the hotel's small chapel, an intimate setting with mahogany pews and stained glass windows overlooking Michigan Avenue. Nancy stood by the altar in her rehearsal dress, radiant yet tense. She caught my eye and gave a nervous smile, the look of someone holding a secret. Derek appeared from a group of Technova colleagues, straightening his tie with that familiar, self-important gesture. His voice carried as he announced, "Everyone, meet Nancy's father." His tone held its usual condescension, heightened by the presence of his peers. "This is Porter Wood, a retiree living modestly in Evanston." The words "living modestly" hung in the air, meant to establish a hierarchy for his colleagues' benefit. "Pleasure to meet you." "Mr. Wood," said a woman in an expensive blazer, "Derek mentioned you're enjoying retirement." "Very much so," I replied, shaking her hand. "Though retirement can be quite educational." They nodded politely, but their interest was fading. In their world, retirees were pleasant but irrelevant. "Dad has simple tastes," Derek continued, speaking loud enough for others nearby. "Nothing wrong with that. Just different generations, different expectations." I felt my jaw tighten, the first sign of breaking composure. "Derek," I said softly, "be careful with judgments. Tomorrow may bring surprises," he laughed, his confidence outweighing his wisdom. "Mr. Wood, no need to lecture me. Reading character is my profession. It's essential in sales." "We'll see." The words fell heavily, making Derek pause, though he quickly recovered for the sake of his image. "What I mean is, success shows clear indicators. how someone dresses, where they live, what they drive. Those reveal priorities and abilities. Interesting view? It's not a view, it's fact. Take my boss, Walter Clean. He'll be here tomorrow. You can see his quality instantly. That's respect he's earned, not luck. Earned respect. Walter would likely find that phrase amusing, since we had built ours together, sleeping on office floors and surviving on pizza for 3 years. Nancy stepped closer, sensing tension. Maybe we should focus on tomorrow's ceremony. But Derek, encouraged by the attention, pressed on. The truth is, Mr. Wood, character is revealed through choices. Walter chose excellence at every stage. Others, he gestured faintly in my direction, prefer comfort over achievement. The remark was sharp, precise, designed to wound without appearing openly cruel. You sound very certain in your judgments, I replied, my voice carrying a firm edge. Certainty comes from accuracy. I've never been wrong about a person's abilities. Derek smiled as though he had secured a victory. Not once. People reveal themselves quickly if you know what to notice. I rose slowly, 4 months of patience settling into clear intent. The chapel grew quiet, conversations fading as guests sensed a shift. You're absolutely right about one thing, Derek, I said, buttoning my jacket with deliberate care. Character is shown through choices. Exactly my point. Tomorrow, you'll have more than one chance to prove yours. Derek's confidence flickered. What do you mean by that? It means, I answered while heading toward the exit, assumptions often come at a cost, especially when made in front of people who matter. Mr. Wood, I don't appreciate... Good night, Derek. I paused at the chapel door and glanced back at the gathering. Enjoy your rehearsal. Tomorrow will be memorable. Dad, wait, Nancy called after me. See you tomorrow, sweetheart. Everything will be as it should. I walked through the hotel lobby with measured steps, past the doorman's respectful nod, and into the cool Chicago evening. Behind me, Derek's voice rose again, likely spinning my departure as proof of an old man's fragile pride. Let him. By morning, those same colleagues would see Derek face the most eye-opening experience of his professional life. My car waited at the hotel's circular drive. Settling behind the wheel, I glanced back at the chapel through the glass. Derek gesturing confidently, Nancy watching the door I had exited, the wedding party returning to place. Tomorrow promised justice. Tonight brought the quiet satisfaction of a plan nearing its peak. The half-hour drive from downtown Chicago to Evanston gave me time to shift from sharp anger to calm resolve. By the time I parked in my driveway, Derek's words had solidified into confirmation. Tomorrow's lesson was not only justified, but necessary. I sat briefly in the car, staring at my modest home. 4 months earlier, Derek had dismissed it as proof of failure. Tomorrow he would see that real success was not always displayed by mansions or luxury cars. Inside, I went straight to my study and opened my laptop. Walter had emailed earlier. Looking forward to meeting your future son-in-law tomorrow. Derek seems ambitious. Ambitious? That was one way to describe him. I typed back. Tomorrow you'll meet someone very interesting at the wedding, Walter. His reply came within minutes. Who might that be? My future son-in-law. You'll have plenty to discuss about character and professional growth. Intriguing. Should I be ready for anything in particular? No, just be yourself. Your natural wisdom will be enough. I closed the laptop and moved to my bedroom, where tomorrow's suit hung neatly pressed. The charcoal fabric looked professional but understated, exactly the impression I wanted before the moment of revelation. The Technova cufflinks waited in their velvet box, prepared to catch Walter's attention at the right time. From my desk, I retrieved a certified check made out to Nancy and Derek Harrington. $50,000. The sum was deliberate, large, enough to show financial weight and powerful enough to challenge Derek's assumptions about my lifestyle. I thought back to his claim at rehearsal that he had never misjudged someone's ability. The arrogance had been striking, but perfect. His overconfidence would make tomorrow's lesson complete. A text from Nancy lit my phone. Dad, are you okay? Derek feels bad about tonight, I replied. Derek feels exactly what he should. Tomorrow will make things clear for everyone. I'm worried about what you're planning. Don't worry, sweetheart. Justice is rarely as harsh as people expect. No reply. She was likely torn, caught between loyalty to Derek and understanding that some lessons can only be learned firsthand. From my study window, I watched the quiet street. Neighbors settling in, reading, watching TV, enjoying retired life. Derek believed this was all I had left. None of them knew tomorrow would bring one of the most meaningful moments of my professional life. Walter's genuine confusion had been perfect. He had no idea what awaited him at the wedding. When he noticed the cufflinks, when Derek introduced me dismissively, when recognition struck, his face would reflect 3 decades of history. I reviewed Derek's record one last time. The restaurant condescension, unsolicited career advice, the dead weight remark, tonight's lecture about choices. Every insult recorded, every assumption noted. Tomorrow, Derek would discover that choices truly reveal character, and his had revealed more than he intended. I prepared for bed with calm precision, like a surgeon before a complex procedure. Everything was ready, the suit, the cufflinks, the check, the audience that mattered most. Nancy knew enough not to interfere when the moment arrived. Turning off the bedside lamp, I felt the quiet satisfaction of a plan ready for execution. Derek had spent months displaying his values, priorities, and definition of worth. Tomorrow, he would learn how costly false assumptions about success can be, especially when made before the people who decide his future. Sleep came easily, filled with dreams of long-awaited justice. The morning of June 15th dawned clear and bright, Chicago's skyline shining under perfect wedding weather. I dressed with deliberate care, like an actor preparing for his most important role, fastening the Technova cufflinks with quiet satisfaction. Today, these small platinum emblems would communicate more than any words could. When I arrived at the Drake Hotel at noon, the building was alive with wedding energy. Nancy was upstairs in the bridal suite, likely easing her nerves with final dress touches. I headed toward the chapel, where guests were beginning to settle in. Walter stood near the front in his navy suit, scanning the crowd with the measured curiosity of a man meeting his employee's new family. When his eyes found me, he offered a polite nod, 2 strangers acknowledging one another at a shared acquaintance's wedding. Derek soon appeared from a side room, immaculate in his formal attire, confidence radiating as if it were another accessory. His gaze moved quickly across the chapel, ensuring Walter had the best possible view. When his eyes landed on me, a flicker of doubt crossed his face, the memory of last night's confrontation still lingering. "Mr. Wood." Derek greeted me with a forced brightness. "Glad you made it after our talk last night." "Wouldn't miss it for the world," I replied evenly. "This promises to be memorable." His smile tightened, but quickly smoothed. Today's performance demanded his full attention. Technova colleagues filled the 3rd row, positioned perfectly as witnesses to whatever might unfold. The processional music began. I took my place at the chapel entrance. Nancy appeared at the aisle's end, radiant in her grandmother's restored wedding gown, her expression glowing with nervous excitement. She slipped her arm through mine, and for a moment, all thoughts of carefully constructed plans vanished, replaced with simple paternal pride. "You look beautiful." "Sweetheart," I whispered. "Thank you, Dad," she replied, her voice trembling with emotion. We walked forward at the traditional, measured pace. Guests rose in respect. Derek stood at the altar, his eyes fixed on Nancy with genuine affection, a reminder of why she had chosen him. Walter watched from the front row, his face showing the careful balance of appropriate enthusiasm. The officiant, dignified in formal robes, raised his hands as we reached the altar. "Who gives this woman in marriage?" "I do," I said firmly, my voice carrying through the chapel. "Her father, with love and hope for her happiness." Nancy squeezed my hand, then released it. I placed her hand in Derek's, and for a brief moment, the 3 of us stood together in silence. "Father, daughter, and son-in-law, be happy, dear," I whispered, kissing her cheek before taking my seat. The ceremony unfolded with solemn tradition. Derek and Nancy exchanged vows with heartfelt sincerity, their words filled with emotion, despite the unspoken tension beneath. I found myself genuinely touched by their promises of love and commitment, even as I anticipated what was still to come. Walter, 2 seats away, occasionally glanced at me with polite interest. Soon his curiosity would shift into something more profound. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Derek kissed Nancy with the certainty of a man who believed his future was secure. Applause filled the chapel, wedding bells rang, and the guests rose to celebrate. As the recessional began, Derek scanned the crowd again, locking eyes with Walter in visible satisfaction. He had married the woman he loved in front of his mentor, without disruption, and managed the silent presence of his unemployed father-in-law. In the vestibule, guests lined up to congratulate the new couple. Nancy and Derek glowed with joy, and I took my place as father of the bride, graciously accepting well wishes. Derek thrived in the spotlight, proudly introducing Nancy to his colleagues. "My wife," he kept saying, savoring the words, his confidence fully restored. The tension from the night before was buried beneath the glow of wedding triumph. Through the shifting crowd, I saw Walter approaching, preparing to offer his congratulations. This was the moment I had orchestrated for 4 months. Derek noticed too, straightening instinctively, the eager employee ready to impress his boss one final time. The banquet hall shimmered under crystal chandeliers, elegantly prepared during the interval. Guests mingled with champagne in hand, their conversations blending with soft jazz from a live string quartet. I stationed myself near the bar, watching Derek circulate confidently. Walter stood by the tall windows, his profile framed by Lake Michigan's sunlight. He had observed the ceremony with polite calculation, but soon such measured control would no longer matter. Derek, arm proudly linked with Nancy's, approached with deliberate confidence. This was his moment, introducing his beautiful new wife to the man who held his career in his hands, while also showcasing his social connections. "Mr. Clean," Derek's voice rose clearly above the reception's buzz. "I'd like you to meet my wife, Nancy, and her father." I timed my approach with exact precision. 4 months of patience was about to bear fruit. Walter turned with polite warmth, extending his hand. "Congratulations, my dear. Derek speaks of you often." "Thank you, Mr. Clean," Nancy replied. "Derek has great admiration for you." Derek's chest swelled with pride at this exchange. Then, with subtle condescension, he gestured toward me. "And this is my father-in-law, Porter Wood. He's retired, lives modestly in Evanston." The words lingered in the air, just loud enough for nearby colleagues to catch, a quiet assertion of hierarchy. Walter's head turned toward me, his executive composure slipping for the first time. His eyes fell on my cufflinks, the Technova emblem catching the chandelier light, platinum and diamonds marking 3 decades of partnership. "Porter." Walter's voice carried unmistakable surprise. "Porter Wood." Derek blinked, stunned by the recognition. "You know him?" "Know him?" Walter's voice rose slightly, drawing attention from nearby guests. "Porter, what on earth are you doing here?" "Attending my daughter's wedding," I replied calmly, extending my hand. "Good to see you, Walter. You're looking well." Derek's face shifted from confusion to suspicion, then to growing alarm. "Mr. Klein, I think there's some mistake. This is just Nancy's father. He's unemployed." Walter stared at Derek as though he had just announced plans to join a circus. "Unemployed?" "Derek, this is Porter Wood, co-founder of Technova Innovations, my business partner for 30 years. The words struck Derek like heavy blows. His confidence gave way to visible horror, his mouth opening and closing without sound. Around us, all conversation stopped. Guests sensed a drama far more gripping than casual chatter. "Partner?" Derek's voice cracked. "That's impossible. He's just what?" Walter's tone had shifted from surprise to something sharper. "Just the man who built this company from the ground up? Just the mind behind half our core technologies? Just my closest friend and colleague?" Derek turned toward me, his face pale against his wedding tan. You're really the co-founder and major shareholder of Technova Innovations?" I nodded quietly. "Yes, the same company where you've spent 3 years explaining how business really works." Nancy moved closer, her face filled with sympathy and unease. She knew this moment would come, but nothing could prepare her for the public collapse on her new husband's face. Walter's executive instincts had taken over, his voice carrying the authority of a seasoned leader. "Derek, Exactly what have you been saying to my business partner? Derek's mouth worked without sound, his confident persona unraveling like expensive paper in the rain. Colleagues who admired his networking skills were now witnessing the most spectacular professional collapse in Technova's history. I didn't know, Derek whispered. He never told me. Walter's expression showed no patience. Derek's complexion had gone from glowing to ashen in seconds. The reception had shifted from celebration to spectacle, guests forming a loose circle like spectators at an impromptu show. "Mr. Klein, please," Derek pleaded, desperation in his voice. I didn't know. He never said he worked at Technova? Worked at? Walter's eyebrows rose calmly. Derek, Porter doesn't work at Technova. Porter is Technova. Half of our patents carry his signature. The truth hit Derek like waves of impact. I could almost see him replaying every dismissive comment, every bit of unsolicited advice, every patronizing moment, now in devastating clarity. "I can explain everything," Derek stammered, turning frantically between Walter and me. "It's all a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding," Walter's voice had hardened, "is how my senior sales manager could treat my business partner like dead weight for months without anyone telling me." Nancy stepped protectively closer to Derek, her wedding dress brushing against the tension. "Mr. Klein, Derek honestly didn't know. Dad never mentioned the company link." "Your father shouldn't have had to," Walter replied firmly, his eyes fixed on Derek. "Basic respect isn't dependent on a job title or bank balance." Derek spiraled, words tumbling out incoherently. "The thing is, Mr. Klein, I always respect people. Always. I was just offering guidance, career advice." "Career advice?" Walter's voice was cold enough to freeze champagne. "You offered career advice to the man who created your job?" The surrounding guests were no longer pretending to chat. Derek's colleagues stood frozen, calculating their distance from the disaster. Even hotel staff lingered at the edges, unsure whether to step in or simply observe. "Derek," Walter continued with surgical precision, "you showed respect by calling my partner unemployed?" "Dead weight?" Derek's eyes widened in panic. "I never said that. I'd never—" "Monday morning," Walter cut through his protest. "You can explain your version of respect to human resources. You should also start looking for new employment." "No!" Derek's composure shattered. "Mr. Klein, please. This is my wedding day. I made a mistake, but I can fix it." "The mistake," Walter said coldly, "was mine. For promoting someone who judges by appearances instead of character." Derek's skin turned gray, his breathing uneven. Nancy reached for him, but he was too lost in panic to respond. The wedding had become a living lesson in the danger of assumptions. "There must be something I can do," Derek begged, voice breaking. "I'll apologize, take a demotion, anything." Walter regarded him with disdain, as if discovering mold in fine wine. "You'll apologize to Porter, certainly. Whether it changes anything remains to be seen." Derek snapped his gaze toward me, eyes wide with desperation. The confident executive who once lectured me on success was gone, replaced by a man on the verge of collapse. "Mr. Wood, Porter, please." His voice shook with fear. "I know I was wrong, but I can learn. I can change. Don't let him end my career." The moment hung between us like a blade suspended in the air. Derek's future balanced on my next words, his face the very picture of desperation. Nancy's eyes filled with tears, torn between the two men she cared for most. Walter stood waiting, calm and unyielding, prepared to carry out the sentence. The guests, silent and riveted, would remember this moment in Chicago society for years. "Walter," I said quietly, my voice carrying through the hushed hall. "Wait." Walter's eyebrows lifted slightly, but he stayed quiet as he had trusted my judgment for 3 decades. I turned to Derek, no longer seeing the arrogant young man who had looked down on me for months, but someone who had just paid the costliest price of his career. His hands shook as he waited for my decision. "Derek," I said, my voice steady but kind, "look at me." He lifted his eyes, and for the first time I saw true regret, not just fear for his job, but real understanding of his mistake. "I accept your apology," I continued, noticing relief spread across his face. "But there's one condition to my forgiveness." "Anything," Derek whispered quickly. Absolutely anything. Never again judge someone's worth by their paycheck or the brand of their clothes. I paused, letting the meaning settle. Value is not measured in money, and respect should never depend on wealth. Derek nodded, eyes filling with tears of regret and gratitude. I understand. I promise. I've learned. I looked toward Walter, who had been observing carefully like someone weighing an important business decision. Walter, I said, Derek made assumptions without the full picture. We've all done that at some point. Walter's expression softened, though his sharp business instinct remained. Are you asking me to ignore 4 months of disrespect toward my partner? I'm asking you to consider that sometimes the greatest lessons come from forgiveness, not punishment. Derek's record here is strong. His sales numbers prove it. This experience may shape him into a better leader, not just a cautious one. Derek glanced between us, clearly aware that his future was being decided in this moment. Nancy stepped beside him, placing a hand on his arm to show support. Walter studied Derek for a long while, his instinct for discipline fighting against his trust in my judgment. Finally, he nodded slowly. Derek. His voice carried authority but had softened. You'll keep your position, but you're on probation for 6 months. Any trace of the behavior Porter described and you're out. Understood? Yes, completely, Derek replied, his voice thick with relief. Thank you, Mr. Klein. Thank you both. I extended my hand, and he shook it firmly, as though sealing a serious agreement. Welcome to the family, son, I said quietly. Remember, everyone deserves respect until they prove otherwise. I will, Derek promised. Truly I will. Nancy moved forward, embracing us both, her joy clear even after the emotional moment. Around us, the wedding guests began to relax, their conversations resuming as tension faded into harmony. Walter clapped me on the shoulder, his familiar grin back in place. 30 years, and you still managed to surprise me, partner. Retirement keeps life interesting, I replied. The string quartet, sensing the calm return, began playing softly again. Champagne glasses were raised, and conversations shifted back to wedding chatter. Derek had learned that life's deepest lessons often arrive in unexpected ways. As the reception carried on, I watched Derek with the guests, noticing subtle changes. The air of arrogance was gone, replaced with something closer to humility. Sometimes justice, when tempered with wisdom, feels sweeter than revenge. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments. To hear the next story, click the box on the left. Thank you for watching.